So what is capital? I mean, it sounds simple, right? It's the factories, the machines, the computers, all the stuff we use to make other stuff. But in economics, trying to add all that up into one single number, a big C for capital, well, that little problem sparked one of the fiercest intellectual battles of the 20th century. Welcome to the Cambridge Capital Controversy. And this quote from the brilliant Cambridge economist Joan Robinson just nails it. She pointed out that, for decades, econ students were given this really important formula. And then the professor would kind of rush past one of the key parts, hoping nobody would notice the elephant in the room. So what was this big secret they were hiding? Well, that secret was a massive hidden problem, a logical conundrum buried right at the heart of economic theory. And it was a problem that would pit two of the world's most famous universities against each other. Okay, so here's the formula at the center of it all. This is the aggregate production function, and it's a huge deal in economics. All it says is that the total output of an economy, that's Q, is a function of the amount of labor, L, and the amount of capital, C. Simple enough, right? The more work and the more stuff you have, the more you can produce. Makes perfect sense. But here is where it all starts to get messy. See, measuring labor, the L, is, well, it's pretty straightforward. You can count the number of hours people work. It's a feasible thing. But capital, how on earth do you add up a factory, a laptop, and a delivery truck into one single number? I mean, they're completely different things. You can't just say one factory plus one truck equals two capitals. It doesn't work. So if you can't add them up physically, the only other way to do it is to add up their price, their monetary value. Okay, makes sense. But as some very smart economists figured out, doing that creates a massive logical trap. And that trap is called the circularity problem. Now, think about this for a second. To figure out the total dollar value of all your capital, you need to know the rate of profit in the economy. But one of the main reasons you wanted to measure capital in the first place was to figure out the rate of profit. It's this perfect, inescapable loop, a total chicken and egg situation. You need to know A to find B, but you need to know B to find A. Now, for a long, long time, mainstream economists had a neat little workaround for this problem. They basically told a simple story, or what the famous economist Paul Samuelson later called a parable. And look, this parable makes a ton of sense on the surface. It's really just basic supply and demand. If coffee gets cheaper, you probably buy more of it. Well, the theory said the same thing applies to capital. As the price of capital, which is the profit rate, goes down, companies will naturally choose to use more of it. So the rule should be simple. Profit rate goes down, capital intensity, the amount of machinery and tools per worker, goes up, period. A nice, clean, predictable relationship. This was a really important idea that helped explain how the economic pie was split between workers and the owners of capital. But was it actually true? And that question set the stage for one of the biggest intellectual showdowns in modern economics. It was a battle between two legendary economics departments, both by pure coincidence, in a city named Cambridge. So in one corner, you've got Cambridge, Massachusetts, home to MIT, with heavyweights like Paul Samuelson and Robert Solow. They defended the mainstream view, saying, look, the simple story is a good enough model for the real world. And in the other corner, across the pond in Cambridge, UK, you had Piero, Sraffa, and Joan Robinson, and they were saying, no, it's not just a simplification, it's fundamentally logically broken. The team in the UK, they weren't just poking holes in the theory. No, they came armed with a logical bombshell that threatened to blow the whole simple story to pieces. It was a weird phenomenon they called re-switching. They asked this one, seemingly simple question that was just devastating. The simple story says, as profits get cheaper, you use more capital. A nice, smooth line. But they asked, what if that's not how it works? What if a really capital-heavy way of doing things is the best choice when profits are super high and when they're super low, but a less capital-heavy method is actually better for all the profit rates in between? Okay, stick with me here, because this is a little bit of a brain twister, but it is the absolute core of the whole debate. Let's say at a really low profit rate, a company chooses technique B. It's got more machines, it's more capital intensive. That fits the old story. Then, as the profit rate goes up a bit, it becomes smarter to switch to technique A, which uses less capital. Still makes sense. But here's the twist, the killer blow. As the profit rate goes up even more, it can suddenly become profitable again to re-switch back to technique B, the one with more capital. That is re-switching. And it wasn't some tiny, weird exception. It was a direct hit. It proved, with pure logic, that there is no simple, predictable, downward-sloping relationship between the price of capital and how much of it you use. The whole foundation of that simple parable just crumbled.
So, wow, after a logical bombshell like that, what happens next? Who won the debate? And what did it mean for the field of economics? Well, the answers are probably not what you'd expect.
First off, why should you even care about this? I mean, this wasn't just some dusty academic fight. The critique from Cambridge, UK, struck at the very heart of some huge economic ideas. If the relationship isn't simple, you can't just say that profit is a measure of how scarce capital is. And even bigger, it shakes up this core idea called marginal productivity. You know, the theory that says in a free market, you get paid based on what you contribute, and a machine's profit is based on what it contributes. If you can't even properly measure capital, you can't be so sure that the profits going to its owners are a direct reflection of its productivity.
So when the dust settled, who won? It was actually pretty clear-cut. The Cambridge UK team won. Their logic was just undeniable. In fact, Paul Samuelson, one of the biggest economists of the century, formally conceded the point in 1966. He admitted that, yes, re-switching was logically possible and the simple parable was flawed.
But, and this is maybe the wildest part of this whole story, despite winning the argument, the Cambridge Capital Controversy was pretty much just forgotten. Mainstream economics, for the most part, just kept right on using those simple, aggregate models as if nothing had ever happened. The elegant but logically broken models were just too convenient to let go of. And that leaves us with this really big, nagging question. In a science that's supposed to be built on logic, if a core theory is shown to have a deep, acknowledged flaw, why does it so often continue to be taught in textbooks and used in models today? That is the strange and unresolved legacy of the Cambridge Capital Controversy.